Independence Day came out in 1996, 25 years ago, directed by Roland Emmerich, starring Jeff Goldblum, Will Smith, Bill Pullman, and a huge amount of other people. The plot of this movie is pretty basic, actually. It's the aliens come to Earth and they want to wipe out mankind. For all intents and purposes, it's the War of the Worlds story. They have these big giant flying saucers that fire these lasers down onto the buildings in the cities, wiping it all out. And basically mankind has to figure out a way to counterattack against the alien invasion. This movie was huge. I mean huge. When I was a kid. 6 years old, seeing aliens destroy buildings, this was like the Star Wars of the 1990s. And granted, as time has gone on, people have realized that, okay, this is really hammy and over the top. But nevertheless, though, I actually think it's a really good time. A huge amount of characters are in this movie, but yet one way or another, they all get their moment to shine, and they have something that's driving them towards the climax of this movie. And it's a lot of strategically moving the pieces towards the spot that they need to get to. And some characters take a long time and don't really get as much attention, and it is a bit obvious that they are trying to make us relate to these characters to make them seem relatable and human. But watching it last night, I actually found myself fairly invested in these characters. And a lot of that is due to the performances from all of these people, particularly from Will Smith and Jeff Goldblum. On top of that, you got a lot of exciting action sequences too, which play into the sense of urgency and tension that we feel throughout the film. Obviously, we have to stop the aliens from destroying the planet, but the way it's done, it makes us as the viewer feel pretty invested in what's happening. This movie has a really good sense of tension too in the first act. When they start to see these anomalies coming from out of the sky, from outer space, they can't really make out exactly what's going on. Even though we see the alien spaceships coming in, the humans on Earth are like, what the hell is this? They start coming into the atmosphere with this fiery cloud enveloping them, and the people on the planet start to freak out like, what the hell is happening? We as the audience get a really good sense of fear and dread and uncertainty as to what's happening. Even though for the most part this movie focuses on the American side, we do get glimpses of how people around the world are starting to react to this, like in Russia, Iraq, Japan, and Australia, and so on. We really get a good sense that this is a big, big worldwide crisis that nobody could have seen coming. I mean, if you saw the trailers at the time, we all know what's going to happen, but as far as the human characters in the film, they either don't really know what's happening, they're scared out of their minds, they're convinced that the aliens are going to destroy them, and some are actually excited and they say, welcome to our planet, we welcome you! They're standing on the rooftops of LA, basking in all the excitement, and it's like, guys, you just, ugh.
What a bunch of a-holes.
And it's when the spaceships finally come out of those enveloping clouds over the cities like New York, Washington, and LA, and seeing the people's reactions to it feels very authentic, because I can imagine if that were to happen in real life, you'd see a lot of people running scared out of their minds, trying to get the hell out of there. And the score adds a lot to that as well, done by David Arnold. The score in here sounds a lot like John Williams' music. The sense of excitement and adventurous feel that you get, particularly when Randy Quaid's character's flying in his airplane, dusting the crops over that field. To me, that always kind of sounded like John Williams. In the ensuing destruction, when the aliens fire their laser beams onto these skyscrapers in the middle of these cities, or at least in the center, since the White House gets blown up, this tower in Los Angeles, I don't know the name of it, but it gets blown up, and the Empire State Building gets blown up too, which that always makes me die a little bit inside, because that's my favorite spot in that whole city. I know it's a movie, but still, In fact, when I was watching it last night, right when that moment happened, I started to say, oh no, don't you dare. Oh, you son of a... Ugh. All that aside, the explosions just keeps going and going and going and going, but not in an obnoxious kind of way. It's done in a way where you see the cities are literally being wiped out right before our eyes, and these people are fleeing for their lives, getting enveloped in the fireball. And right when this dog just misses the fireball in that tunnel, makes me feel so great. And as far as the characters go, the two lead actors that probably really carry this movie, Will Smith and Jeff Goldblum. Dave Levinson is a cable repair guy in New York City, and he's been divorced for 3 years. Still wearing his wedding ring, unable to move on from what happened, and he's a pretty insecure guy from what we can tell. Still in denial about his divorce, he still wears his ring, and he punched a guy that he thought that his ex-wife was having an affair with, who actually turned out to be the president, but she actually wasn't having an affair. It was his own insecurities that led to that point. And Jeff Goldblum really just brings a lot of his own quirks to the character, and he takes it very seriously. You gotta give him credit, and similar to his portrayal of Ian Malcolm in Jurassic Park, his bumbling stutters, it never gets old, and he deserves to be quoted and have impressions of him done, because he's that good at it. Especially the interactions between him and that one guy who is the makeup artist in Mrs. Doubtfire. I don't know the guy's name. I think it's Harvey Firestein, I don't know. Got that really high, raspy voice. Oh my God, David, I gotta call my mother. I gotta call my housekeeper. I gotta call my lawyer. Oh, forget my lawyer. Yeah, you got a problem. You give people who don't know how to simply recycle. What the hell is going on? My God in heaven. So sue me, David. But he actually is shown to be a really smart guy, despite being this cable repair guy that doesn't really seem to amount to much. He's able to catch on to what the aliens are up to because they start to see that these satellites are disappearing due to the alien ship being above Earth, and he figures, okay, so we're not gonna really have much of a threat anyway because the signal's gonna disappear at this time, but when he sees the alien ships come in, then he starts to realize, oh my God. At that point, they're gonna launch an attack on the whole world. So with the help of his father, played by Judd Hirsch, they drive down to Washington, D.C. to find Dave's ex-wife, who is the press secretary for the president. Despite some initial resistance on President Whitmore's part, and unfortunately too late, decides, get everybody out of the cities now. No questions asked, get him out of there. But Dave turns out to be a really important factor in fighting these aliens, and inevitably he ends up uploading this virus to the mothership. More on that later. Then on the other side of the country, we got Captain Stephen Hiller, played by Will Smith. This was the movie that put Will Smith on the map as a superstar. He was already famous for the first Bad Boys and the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, but as a Marine pilot taking on aliens and the charisma and charm that Will Smith brings to this movie, there's a reason why he's still relevant to this day. And I've always liked Will Smith. He's been one of my all-time favorite actors. He's dating this woman named Jasmine who has a son named Dylan, and she's a stripper in LA. And Steven's trying to get to become this space shuttle pilot, and due to him being married to a stripper, NASA's not really on board with it. And there's a really good sense of camaraderie he has with his fellow pilots, particularly Jimmy, played by Harry Connick Jr. But I do know, here today, that the Black Knights will emerge victorious once again. And then when they launch a counterattack against the alien ship, only to learn that they have shields protecting them, and a lot of the pilots get wiped out, including Harry Connick Jr.'s character. When Will Smith is being chased by that one starfighter ship, he manages to figure out a way to cause that alien ship to crash, and it leads to one of the best scenes in the movie, is when he starts to antagonize the alien in his ship after he sees it crash.
Ship all banged up? Who's the man? Huh? Who's the man? Wait till I get another plane. I'm lining all your friends up right beside you.
And he punches the alien in the face, which only Will Smith could get away with that. That's what I call a close encounter. And it's the second act, we actually get a lot more downtime with the characters, trying to get inside their heads, and it's an obvious attempt to get us to relate to what they're dealing with. Where Dave and his ex-wife talk about how he wasn't really ambitious enough. All he wanted to do was become a cable repair guy. And his ex-wife says, didn't you ever want to be part of something special? Oh, honey, I was happy where I was. And then Jasmine relates to the First Lady, who she finds in the wreckage of Los Angeles, how she was hoping that Steven was going to marry her and then become a stepfather to her son Dylan. Again, it's not the greatest way of making us relate to these characters. It's pretty obvious that they're trying to make them relatable in some way, but I personally found myself fairly invested in these storylines, even if it's a very simple and not so greatest way of doing it. I still think it gets the job done. And then they end up going to Area 51, where it turns out the Secretary of Defense was the former head of the CIA and was aware of that in the first place, much to the annoyance of the cabinet and the president. Area 51, Area 51, you knew then, and you did nothing. And then we get Dr. Oken, played by Brent Spiner, who was also Data in Star Trek The Next Generation. Really, really biggest oddball I've ever seen in a movie. Yeah, I'm saying it. Thankfully, he has a limited amount of screen time and is not in there very much. And I had noticed this recently when I was watching it. He looks like Robert Plant meets Albert Einstein. At least the intellect of Albert Einstein and the looks of Robert Plant.
The last 24 hours have been really exciting.
Exciting? People are dying out there. I don't think exciting is a word I'd choose to describe it.
Bill Pullman as the president, some people actually laugh at that, but he's actually pretty solid as the president. He even looks like a politician. Whoever casted him, good job. And towards the climax, he ends up giving that really great speech, which we'll talk about later. But then we also get a really scary scene when the doctor and his colleagues operate on that alien that Will Smith brings in. Very horror movie-esque, and this scene scared the crap out of me as a kid. I always fast forwarded through that, but watching it now, I actually forced myself to sit through it. Kind of like the hospital scene in Spider-Man 2. Literally made me shake to my core, and maybe that's because I don't really like scary movie stuff that much. Maybe I'm just too squeamish or too much of a weasel in that regard, but yeah, I've never really been a big fan of that sequence. Not in a bad way, it's just, ugh. But we also get a heartfelt scene too when the president's wife shows up at the hospital and unfortunately she ends up passing away. Could you say that's melodramatic? yeah, maybe. But the reactions of the president and his daughter, played by Mae Whitman, I honestly found myself kind of tearing up a little bit. I think it's mostly because of the daughter's reaction and seeing how the president was taking his loss, knowing that he was going to have to look after his own daughter now with all this other stuff happening. We don't really get a whole lot of character depth with him since he was a fighter pilot apparently in the Gulf War, and he's portrayed a bit too perfect and there's not as much flaws on the surface with him, but it's his reaction to the loss of his wife that I think makes him actually pretty relatable in a lot of ways. But ultimately Dave comes up with a plan to upload a virus into the alien technology to take down their shields, so that way the human population has a chance of taking them down for good. As far as uploading a computer virus into alien technology from Microsoft, look, I'm not an IT expert, but I think that's a really, really big leap logically when you really think about it. Like, how the hell are you able to do that? Again, I'm not an expert on computer stuff, and also, it's a movie, you gotta take leaps in logic somehow. Even watching it last night, I thought, oh, what? Nevertheless, though, it really gives humanity a good reason to find the courage to fight back. We're gonna have to fly the alien craft and go into the mothership, and we'll set off some kind of explosion, which will disable it, and that'll disable the smaller ships below, and that should give you a few minutes to do your thing, do your stuff. So they managed to organize a counteroffensive worldwide by sending the message out through Morse code, and all these pilots who have some experience and some military experience to not so much flying experience, including Randy Quaid's character, Russell Case. Now, as far as that guy goes, Randy Quaid is a riot in here. Unfortunately, they don't really focus much on him. His plotline kind of drags on for a while. It's just like him going from one place to another. And apparently he has post-traumatic stress disorder from his service in Vietnam, and he claims that he was kidnapped by aliens 10 years ago. They never really delve deep into like why he thinks that, or if it's some kind of paranoid delusion or something. But Randy Quaid has a lot of great lines in here, and his delivery is just too perfect. Lucas's farm's on the other side of town. Are you sure? And when he finally manages to go up into the alien ship as it's firing its weapon, he's not able to fire his missile because of a malfunction, but ultimately he decides to sacrifice himself. Hello, boys! I'm back! And even though I wish there was more of this throughout the movie, when Will Smith and Jeff Goldblum finally team up to go inside the mothership and upload that virus, their interplay is so well done. Bumbling smart guy versus the hot-headed pilot. It's a perfect match made in heaven. What do you say we try that again, huh? Yes, without the oops. That way. Forget the fat lady. You're obsessed with the fat lady. Drive us out of here. We're not hit yet. Stop sightsee driving. The mothership is destroyed, and so are the other alien spaceships across the globe, and humanity rejoices in victory. And that really plays into the sense of unity and patriotism that we see throughout the film, because this does take place on the 4th of July weekend. And Bill Pullman's speech that he gives to all the pilots at Area 51, you could say is really heavy-handed and ham-fisted in here, and I guess Roland Emmerich has a thing for patriotic stuff and uniting humanity together for some common cause. And some people I've heard say that it's complete cornball and there's no need for it, but I can't help it. I always eat that speech up every time I watch it, and Bill Pullman's performance is too good to criticize.
We're going to survive. Today, we celebrate our Independence Day.
And as far as the special effects go, despite being dated in some ways, the mixture of practical miniature sets and CGI shots, it all looks really seamless, especially with the explosions of the landmarks in these cities. I guess somehow they filmed a camera on its side and did it at a certain frame per second or something. I don't know exactly how that went down. It almost kind of makes me miss effects like this, something that actually looks real and not so obviously green screen effect. Not saying that CGI is all bad and everything. I got no problem with it. But stuff like this almost kind of makes me yearn for what people did back then in the film industry in regards to visual effects and so on. So Independence Day is just perfect popcorn entertainment in my book. It's the right amount of campiness and patriotism and fun and urgency, with a pretty decent emotional center under the surface with certain characters in certain moments, and a personal staple for me every year on the 4th of July. And as far as summer movies go, this is one of my all-time favorites. I got no shame in saying that whatsoever. And in my book, besides The Patriot, it's Roland Emmerich's best movie to this day. Those are my thoughts on Independence Day. What are your guys' thoughts on the movie? Comment below and tell me, and I'll see you guys in the next video. And happy Independence Day, everybody.